HighCast, episode 21. HighCast is recorded in the studios of Highland FM. Go to highlandfm.org.au to learn how you can volunteer. It's good fun. Do it. The SES, Wingecarribee SES, is hosting a gentleman's evening on 17 July. Lots of fun, first aid, learn what to do at a crash, learn how to behave sensibly around a chainsaw. You know, guys, you need to do it. 17 July, SES, Wingecarribee SES Facebook page. Get there, register, places are limited. The HighCast event, Majors Meets Paddock to Plate Tour. I said last time that I wish every day was a Paddock to Plate Tour, and it's true. I wish I could wake up to rolling green fields. I wish I could wake up to somebody making beautiful cakes for me. I wish someone would serve me slow roasted lamb every single day. And I know that's not possible every day, but if you go on a Majors Meets Paddock to Plate Tour, you can do it. Go to Majors, maugers.com.au. Follow the links to Paddock to Plate Tour. It's fun. I guarantee it. My current experience, or my optimization tool rather, Brightspenders, brightspenders.com. Anthony was on the podcast, and I had a really fascinating conversation with her about using my money wisely. She's currently coaching my wife and I through how to use our spending as part of a wider and broader plan. And we're doing things like budgeting, but not just writing things in a spreadsheet. It's budgeting for the future, and it's really comprehensive in how you budget. We are amalgamating all of our accounts, and I'm surprised about how silly we were using our accounts. I'm looking at all of my electronic transactions. My gosh, I had money just leaking out everywhere. And now we have a 10-year plan, and we're looking at how we're going to buy investment properties and all the rest. So go to brightspenders.com. Do it if you're into sorting out your life like I am, although clearly I'm not very good at it. If you're into that sort of stuff, do it. brightspenders.com. Our guest today is Joe Stammers. Joe is representing Southern Highlands Koala Conservation Project, which aims to gain a better understanding of koalas in the Southern Highlands. Welcome, Joe.
G'day, Dave. How are you? Very
well, thanks. Hey, koalas in the Highlands. How cool is that?
Very cool.
Yeah.
It's been a incredible journey for me over the last 4 years, I guess, when we started the project, and it's just been a fabulous thing to be part of.
I was thinking this morning when I was preparing for the podcast, how lucky we are to live in an area that has an Australian icon.
Absolutely.
Like it's not many people that can say they live in an area that has koalas.
Not that many. I think we're looking at across New South Wales, maybe about 30 or 35,000 perhaps, and we've got around about the estimate that we got from the Office of Environment Heritage was around 3,000 to 4,000. So
10% of the population.
10% of the population is here, which is pretty incredible. Like, and you look at places like Port Macquarie or that are known for koalas, and they have a similar kind of size shire that we do, and they've got the estimates there are less than what we have. So it's been 4 years ago, talking with long-time residents in this area, when I would ask them, do you know that we've got koalas in the area? And they were like, no, never heard of them. There were people that did know, but there was, I guess, this kind of understanding that they didn't want to, there was some kind of fear, I guess, that getting that knowledge out might somehow harm them. But,
really?
But essentially, what has been found is that if people don't know about these animals or what's in their backyard, then how are they ever going to care for them?
Yeah, okay.
And when you're talking about with the development pressure that Sydney's under now, and it's starting to reach up into the Highlands, and if you have a look at what's happening in Wollondilly and Campbelltown, where they're under huge development pressure, when we possibly next in line for that development pressure. If we don't understand what's here, then there's no way that we can, if we don't have the data or haven't done the research, then we're going to really struggle to protect them. So yeah.
It's really fascinating. I find it really interesting that people considered that the best way to conserve was to keep it a secret.
I think it's that fear, like just generally like a if you alert government officials or something that will somehow mean that that is going to harm them. But I think that goes back to probably a lot of, I don't know, there's probably a few underlying reasons for that. But, unless we have that knowledge and have done that kind of research and have the data, then there's literally no way to know. Like, if someone was to put a development application in for, to subdivide a 10-acre block into, whatever small blocks.
So it's not necessarily all in good faith in terms of the koalas. It's to protect their own.
Well, it's protect their possibly protect because koalas are they rely on habitat, and I guess they work as a kind of umbrella species for a lot of other species because I just did some calculations before I came here because with the numbers that we've got, and we've got 3,000 to 4,000. So, and I think one thing that people struggle with, say when they move down to the Highlands, and they may have retired down here from Sydney, and if you were to put the Southern Highlands Shire or Wingecarribee Shire over the top of Sydney, it's basically the same as the entire Sydney basin. So it's like having a council area from Manly
to
in the east to Penrith, or even beyond, like into the Blue Mountains, and then from north to south, you might be thinking, from Hornsby, Ku-ring-gai down to Wilton or something.
Really, my gosh,
it's massive. So, and but in their heads, people think of the Highlands as this cleared landscape with rolling green hills. I know you mentioned that in your paddock to plate talk.
Yeah.
What's interesting, so it's we've got an entire shire that's 2,700 square kilometres. Yeah. 60% of that remains bushland. So only 40% is cleared.
And is when you say remains bushland, is that national park or
no? Not just national park.
So it's privately owned land,
privately
or crown
owned land
or whatever it might be.
Yeah, crown land, either crown land. Some of obviously in the Upper Nepean, the catchment lands. So
of course.
That, and then you've got national parks. The national parks plus I think it's about 45% is still private land. So
wow.
And so if you think we've got 3,000 koalas across the calculations I had were, so we've got
Joe's brought a little fact sheet.
I tried to figure it out. So we've got 160,000 hectares of native bushland and 3,000 koalas in a shire. And then this will give you, next figure will give you an idea of how difficult it is to find koalas and why people will go, there's no koalas here. That means there's only one koala every 40 to 50 hectares of bushland. So imagine trudging through bush, like that's 40 or 50 Melbourne cricket grounds size patch of bush.
So a hectare is roughly the size of a big cricket pitch. Roughly.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Or it's about 100 by 100.
Yeah, okay.
100 metres by 100 metres is a hectare.
Oh, okay, there you go.
So almost like a footy field or something like that. And imagine that covered in trees. So
that's a big, and 40 to 50 of those. So that's a really big space.
Yeah, on average, you're only going to find one koala for every 40 or 50 of those football fields, essentially. And those are covered in trees. So.
And is you said that's just on average. So I assume in some areas where there's the right vegetation, there's going to be more, and in other areas where the vegetation is not so great for them, there'll be less.
So the volcanic soils that you get in the Southern Highlands, like in the east of the Shire, like the Robertson, Kangaloon, so sort of more towards the escarpment.
Yep.
You might have a koala I think their home range is something like 5 to 10 hectares.
Oh, really? So it's only quite small.
Yeah. So, but like the west of the Shire, so sort of west of the Hume Highway, where it's more of that sort of sandstone, more scrubby. There's less rainfall because the rainfall in the Shire goes from I think it's like 1100 at Robbo, and then you travel west.
Is that mils per year?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So about 1100 milliliters per year, and then you then travel west, and it goes down to I think maybe 600. Out at Canyonly, 600, 700, I think. So it's almost like that. And so you've got like completely different vegetation. It's all sandstone, and so you've got I think the home ranges might be so you've got maybe 200 to 300 hectares.
Wow.
Per koala.
So 10 to 11 to 200 to 300 hectares.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's almost like they're. I know some of our scientific people say, when I say this, but it's almost like they're almost different species. You got these like you got these like luxurious people like koalas in the east that are sort of like living it up in some beautiful rainforest habitat.
It's kind of like the demographics of the Shire, to be honest.
I'm not going to answer that.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. There's different folks with different strokes for different folks, right?
Absolutely.
Wow,
so,
that's really fascinating.
That kind of idea of these koalas in the West really, finding it tough, but they are surviving, and they've survived for hundreds of thousands of years.
Was it millions of years? Or
It's millions. Yeah. But they are adaptable in that way. So, and I guess part of the reason that we really keen to continue this project as well, and which we will be doing, is the idea that with climate change that. The potential for as this area's got, because we're at a higher altitude than, say, in the Sydney Basin. So on the outskirts of the Sydney Basin, where there's another really good population, Campbelltown and Wollondilly, that they may potentially, as the weather gets hotter, migrate a little bit south. So
wow,
yeah, and I don't know if you've seen any of the pictures of the koalas as well, but up here we've got some great big.
Alpine koalas,
but they are furry. They're like yetis almost. They are big, very big. So and that's the same. Like so in Queensland, like that's with most biology anyway. With animal biology, that as you get further south, the animals will get bigger. So in the southern hemisphere anyway. So as things get colder, the animals will get bigger because they are storing more energy, able to store more energy. So
who would have thought the koalas would be so diverse, even over what did you say, 2,500 or 2,700 square kilometers? Yeah. The diversity and difference is pretty incredible.
Yeah, and that's the interesting thing, like with I guess the research with genetics, with understanding. I guess the microbiome as well, even of koalas, because they're eating eucalypts.
So that's their gut, right?
Yeah, their gut. Yeah. So what's inside their gut? So there's a lot of research going on with, the genetics as well as what are koalas eating? Like they're leathery leaves. They're
eating poison essentially.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. Poison for us.
Yeah, poison for us. So how do these? And that's I guess why translocating koalas, which means like transferring them from one area to another.
Of course, you wouldn't even think that.
Yeah, you don't think that. Or like you just go, oh, they'll be right. There's because you probably might have heard stories of. Lots of koalas in Cape Otway, and the government or the Victorian government had to cull some because they were eating out the trees. I saw photos with, 8 or 10 koalas in a tree, and they were starving. So it was really awful. But the idea of translocating them is not the simple, moving them to another area.
So their microbiomes evolved to digest a specific type of eucalyptus leaf, and even though they might be like in theory able to eat 10 or 20 different types of eucalyptus leaves, their microbiome is only evolved to a certain couple or adapts better to a certain couple. Who would have thought, man? Koalas, no wonder they're just going complicated koalas. Get with the times.
And I guess it's really interesting. Like they provide as working as this umbrella species for these other kind of animals.
Yeah.
Like although people would a lot of scientists go, gee, there's more money going into koalas.
So hang on, what does umbrella species mean?
Pardon?
What does umbrella?
An umbrella species. So biologists or ecologists would think of them as an umbrella species in that they cover a large area, and they also the research or the money that might go into research for them would also influence other animals well. So
it's covering a wide area.
Vegetation as well. So there's research that goes into their vegetation, what type of trees. So that's one of the things that we've done with our own project is a master's student from Sydney University actually looked into what are the preferred tree species in the highlands that they're using. And because currently there's a planning policy which covers koala habitat, and it's the only animal-specific planning policy.
Interesting.
And it only covers, it's almost like the research on this is like 20 years old, and only covers 10 tree species or primary feed trees, which people might have heard about that. They thought that koalas only eat 10 kind of feed trees, and they're the ones that we should protect. The thinking now is that they utilise a whole suite of of trees for not just feed but also for habitat. So, in the latest, incarnation of this new planning policy that's under review, the number of trees has gone from 10 primary feed trees to 65 primary habitat trees. So it's under review at the moment, our research has added, I think it was 9 extra trees in the highlands.
We weren't even close.
No.
It's not like, you lucked out by only getting 75%. What's 1/6? What 12 goes into 108 times, so it's it's not even that. It's not even as good as that. My gosh.
Yeah, it was that kind of thinking. If we protect, those 10 trees, that koalas will be fine. And that was meant to cover the whole of New South Wales. But with improvements in vegetation mapping in extra research, we just need to.
And science is like that, though. Yeah. Like every 20 years or whatever, you kind of look back 20 years ago and say, what were we thinking?
Yeah.
What our knowledge was so limited.
Yeah.
And who would have thought that the interaction of the biosphere was so complicated, that even one single species would utilize 65 different types of is that just eucalypt trees? Yeah,
so that they're the suite of eucalypt trees that are being thought of as either primary or secondary habitat of primary needs. So at the same time, koalas will prefer different kinds of trees for feed.
Yeah.
I think our research has shown, and in the east of the Shire where there's more rainfall and you've got different soil types, you're going to have different types of eucalypts growing there than you would in the west of the Shire. But it's shown that I guess koalas are quite adaptable in some ways, but still I guess the idea that when the habitat is less forgiving or there's less nutrients in the trees, that they are going to need bigger home ranges, and that sort of plays into in areas where there is a good population, which is out west as well, throughout the Southern Highlands there's a really good population and potentially growing as well, that we're going to need to, there may be different planning outcomes that need to be understood before we start saying, okay, that's fine. We can put, fine to subdivide down to, 10 acres when in fact the koala's going to need large expanses of habitat in that particular area.
Or if you subdivide, you can't have fences or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I think that's really cool though. Like I have this vision of a utopian future where we all there's fantastic buildings, like really cool like Jetson style buildings that are mixed in around pristine environment and all that. Like I reckon that would be really fascinating to be able to do something like that based on solid scientific evidence that says, well, look, you can have your koalas and you can have your rolling green hills as long as
you understand certain issues that need, and I guess that's part of what this project is about. You know, we're not under massive development pressure that the rest of Sydney is under, and interestingly, when up and down the coast, this is happening too, and I guess that's why we feel that potentially the state government may be looking at this area as a real showpiece for what can be done, because we don't have that massive development pressure that on the coast does, so we can really ensure that our threatened species, not just koalas, but all threatened species, or all our wildlife will have a future as well. Yeah,
the Highlands leading the way of showing how you can provide really good balance.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's not just just with wildlife or bushland. It's also potentially with sustainable agriculture as well. Like how to integrate that. We all, the whole, I listen to a few things on regenerative agriculture as well, and that's one really interesting thing from this project is you get to talk to hundreds of landholders, and when an old farmer looks at you and calls up or something, you go out to his property and he's like a 7-year-old kid again seeing a koala in his tree.
Awesome.
It's just and I've had a conversation with an old farmer that is genuinely regretting how he managed his land in the past, and that's again that idea of science, knowledge, education, not just in I guess ecology, but also in agriculture, so like agricultural science, agricultural and economics, all that kind of thing, of new knowledge coming in and being open to it and saying, okay, well, we can manage our land this way, we can manage a different way, and not just closing off saying, oh, we've always done it this way, therefore there are better ways to do it. And it doesn't mean that you have to be a tree-hugging greenie. Like I'm in no way a tree-hugging greenie. I'm open, development, we need it. We need development. Like our economy
but it can be
needs
done
it.
together.
Absolutely.
You can have a thriving agricultural community that works in with a thriving ecosystem.
Absolutely.
But you need to take the step back. You need to think about it. You need to put in the effort, because if you don't, then you'll either have no agriculture or no ecosystem.
Absolutely.
And then nobody wins.
Yeah, and I guess it's one thing I've noticed just with the dry spell at the moment, where there's people going, oh, what about all these kangaroos everywhere, and how are we going to control those?
Yeah,
that's control. There's that kind of idea of going, okay, well, why are they on the road, like more of them increasingly on road verges? Why are they? Why are we seeing so many? And it's potentially because. Like I haven't looked into this, not exactly what I focus on or anything, but when the bush dries out, they're looking for for feed in other areas, and they'll the road verge is almost like the last bastion for where there's
it's nice and green on that road verge.
It is, with the little the little channel drainage and stuff with the little so it's a little bit wet there, and they hold the moisture. So it's how we I guess. How we manage that agricultural, but also that rural lifestyle, and I guess in the Highlands that's changing as well. It used to be strongly agricultural. Like if you had a big block of land, you'd definitely be running cattle or sheep or growing potatoes if you're in Robbo.
Not so much grazing, not so much cropping, but definitely grazing.
Yeah. So, and how's obviously now there's a little bit of a change where people are buying rural lifestyle blocks, I guess, just for the lifestyle. But then when that happens, how do you manage feral pests? How do you manage wildlife? How do you there's a hell of a lot of work involved in even a rural lifestyle block, and I don't think people get the idea of living on a farm, but don't understand that
Yeah, I'm one of those people. I don't own a block, but like one day I would like to. And I'm kind of learning through conversations with people like yourself, through people like John Major, who kind of laughed at me in this program and said, "What are you going to do, mate? What are you?"
So what are you going to do? What is your dream to?
I'd like to buy 10 hectares, really, or 10 acres, whatever I can afford. That's really what it comes down to. And I would like to have a couple of head of cattle. I would like to have a koala habitat, whatever it might be. But I'd like to experiment on that agriculture ecosystem sort of plane, and veggie garden, bees, chooks, maybe a pig and a goat, maybe a couple of head of cattle, and really big chest freezer.
Yes.
So that once a year the gun comes out, and invite friends around. Oh, definitely some brewing. Definitely some brewing as well. Yep. But you need, like, I think, that's the lifestyle that people I think that people are drawn to that.
I think so too.
Like I grew up in the city, in the suburbs, but I was very lucky. I lived on the northern side of Sydney, around the Hornsby Shire, and I was just there the weekend with my folks, and I went through you're able to walk through the bushland, and it's on your doorstep, and you feel, even though you're in the suburbs, that you're not. Yeah. And so you come to a place like the Windsor Caribbean, and you've got, well, not just the bushland, but you've got that agricultural feel. Yep. And I do feel, maybe I'm just an idiot, but I feel that people are drawn to that. Like that's our evolution.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We evolved to hunt and to gather.
Yeah, and like I grew up on the outskirts of Sydney too, so I grew up in Appin, which has very significant koala population. But also every afternoon I'll be walking my dog out in the bushland. So, and that's kind of why I didn't fall into, but chose this line of work as well. Where, but yeah, I'm also drawn to that dream. I've looked into the idea of biointensive agriculture. I don't know if you've seen that kind of stuff where you look at intensive crop rotations and on small scale agriculture. Yes. I'm looking at doing a master's degree, a Master's of Science in resilient and sustainable communities. Yeah. And there's a college in the States that does it, and they do it at what's called a bioregional approach. Yeah. Which over a catchment area, for example, you look at how you can adapt to and transform your economy, your community, and your environment to live a really sustainable, regenerative, whatever you want to call it, lifestyle. Because I think I feel like that's the future. I think so too. I think the monocropping.
It's still a success to go out, particularly out west.
Out west.
It'll still thrive for a while.
Absolutely.
But it can't go on forever.
Absolutely. And I think that's, in areas where, particularly, this kind of idea where you were saying, like a catchment area, a bioregional, where the Southern Highlands has its own climate almost. It's got its own things that it's going to be good at. It's got great access to water, but it gets very cold. Okay, yes. So what are we going to grow? How what's going to be best for up here? But also thinking about the market as well. Okay, well, what will Sydney like? What will people that are increasingly becoming it's like a Hong Kong style, lots of towers and everything, but what is that market going to value in the future as well? So that, what are the people in Sydney going to value? And I think, Southern Highlands is really well placed, particularly if the outer edges of Sydney continue to go the way that they do.
Yeah, well, Wollondilly is a great example of there's just houses going up everywhere in Wollondilly.
Yeah, and that was the Camden region, fabulous farmland around there, but that's slowly going or faster going.
The birthplace of agriculture has virtually no agriculture anymore.
Exactly.
It's the art, but look, I think to bring it back to the koala conservation, it's about thinking and about planning so that you can have all of that. We had I had Steve Horton, who's the chairperson of the Chamber of Commerce, and he was talking about a broad plan so that we know where we're going over the future. And it's very similar to what you're talking about as well, of having an idea of how we're going to have economy, community, environment working together so that species like koalas can be here forever.
Hopefully, that would be the plan.
And is it? Correct me if I'm wrong. I think I read this on the website that this all started in 2013 after a bushfire. Is that right?
Yeah, people might remember in the end of 2013 there was a bushfire that started in Balmoral Village. It's called by the RFS the Hall Road bushfire, and it essentially travelled from actually started next door to my parents' house.
Don't say that. You didn't hear that here, ladies and gentlemen.
No, they know exactly what happened. There was a tree fell on a power line.
Okay.
So so I got a call. Yeah. Anyway, that was an interesting day for me.
Yeah.
So they were fine because it actually blew past them and then blew across between Bargo and Balmoral Village, and then crossed the Hume Highway and burnt out essentially a third of the water catchment lands. And people don't realize,
so Avon Dam sort of over there?
That area. So that northern part up to Picton Road, from Avon Dam up to Picton Road, so a third of that was burnt out. And essentially that area is to some extent a little bit of a wildlife haven. I
would imagine so if it's all protected land because of the catchment.
No bushwalking or anything. So and it is managed. So part of it is under national parks, but a lot of it is the part of Water New South Wales lands.
Yep.
And what we found was that after that fire, there were a number of reports from the RFS of koalas getting killed on the Hume Highway, but also we started getting reports from people in the north of the Shire just saying, we've got a koala on our property. And the number of reports just didn't tally with the idea that there weren't many koalas in the Shire, because previous to that, I guess there was this idea that they just weren't reported, I guess, and like I mentioned before, there was this kind of fear of reporting them. So
this is 2013 and we didn't really know how many koalas.
There'd been no studies done, and this was it was during the 80s that a lot of research was done on the koalas in Campbelltown. So it was Professor Rob Close, and I remember that as a kid growing up, and his reports were in the newspapers every week. So he named all the koalas, and as a kid, it was like very much that. I'll probably read the cricket results or something, the junior cricket results, which I was involved with, and I think it was called Matt Koala or something. And that was just who they'd spotted or who they'd tagged, and that research was pretty groundbreaking actually. And even now, although he's retired now, he's extremely well regarded, and that kind of research has and even the way that he has engaged the community has kind of inspired us to try to engage the community in a similar way by name when we did our tracking, when we had the tracking with the GPS collars, which was about 6 months after, in 2015, I think. We named the koalas and everything and gave them, just to personalise them a little bit.
You said there's 3,000. How many did you, or only the ones that you collar?
We only collared 20 out of, and what was great with that was that we were able, we got, I think it was like 30,000 in donations from local, locals in the Highlands, which was amazing.
See, that shows that people are interested in what we were talking about before, that people want to live in a place that you get great fresh produce, you can live a healthy lifestyle surrounded by a fantastic ecosystem.
Absolutely.
It is really proof that that's the way of the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And people that you might not think, like, I'm not going to name people, but people that you might not think that would have donated, were very prominent in donating, and always thankful for that. And even the people that originally we got a call from a very prominent local identity that noticed a koala on their property, and absolutely overjoyed to see one on the.
Wow!
They were showing their their grandchildren and all that kind of thing.
That's the thing, right? We've got an Australian icon within and not just like a world-renowned icon is within the Shire.
Yeah, and just on that world renowned, like even today I was driving up the Hume Highway and I passed a bus. Okay, so on the bus was China. On the back of the bus or coach was Chinese writing. As I pulled up beside it to pass it, there's a huge koala like graphic, and I was just in my head. I thought, hold on, are they going up to the Highlands to see koala? Or I don't know. It might have just been a advertising thing, but the thought being.
Well, I was going to ask that question. Is there any scope in some sort of tourism attraction around koalas? I
think it's increasingly. Well, not potentially. There could be that. Well, just for example, in Port Macquarie, which is renowned for their koalas, they actually have. I believe they have less koalas than us on a similar size shire.
We won't haggle over the detail.
No, we won't.
But you suck Port Macquarie.
But they've got the Port Macquarie Koala Hospital, and they get. I believe over 200,000 people going through a year.
See, and this is I talked about.
It's all run by donations.
I was talking about this
incredible.
With Mr. Horton as well. Like we're going to have an airport in Western Sydney. There's Koala Park in bloody West Pennant Hills.
Yep.
Which is
they don't have koalas on the North Shore, do you?
A ridiculous part of the world for a tourist attraction. But anyway. So, we're going to be, less than an hour from a major international airport.
Yep.
What's the first thing a Chinese tourist wants to do? Or one of the first...
Any Asian tourist.
Yeah. They want to get off the plane down here, and they can do koalas, great food, great wine.
Absolutely.
They can do a fantastic bushwalk down at...
Waterfalls.
They can do...
And then head down the beach, afterwards if it's a hot day.
Yeah, so or even on their return, like the last thing they do after a week in Sydney, it's a short journey down, and you can get all of your Australian experience within an hour of an international airport.
Yeah. Well, just funny on that, but even there's a funny story that we came across when we were researching the history of koalas in the Southern Highlands. So the Bargo brush, so sort of pretty much between Pheasant's Nest up to Mittagong, was the first ever European sighting of a koala. So there is thought that koalas were either hunted out of Sydney or probably unlikely to have been in the sort of the Sydney the eastern part of Sydney, potentially because of the soil type. So because you've got this shale, sandstone and transition soil like in the southwest, and that's why now they continue to be seen in Campbelltown, Wollondilly, in the Southern Highlands, because you've got this shale geology that sits underneath. So, but just in terms of the early histories, that one of the stories we came across was a tourist, Archduke Franz Ferdinand.
Hang on. As in the guy that got shot to start World War One.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So he was a mad keen hunter.
No.
So
that's awesome.
So 1890s.
Yeah.
So mad keen hunter, he's which is quite ironic. The fact that he probably, I believe, something in the order of he shot 200,000 plus animals in his...
Sorry, 200,000. No wonder he got shot.
It's quite ironic.
Yeah.
But he, in the 1890s, he did a world tour. He came to Sydney as one of his stops, and one of the things he wanted to do was go shoot some wildlife. And so he travelled down to Mossvale, Mossvale Station, and then went straight out to the Wollondilly, I think it's Arthursley, which is Sydney University on the Wollondilly River.
Yeah.
And his diary records him shooting, I think, maybe 5 to 10 koalas.
No.
Multiple platypus. It's insane. So, so quite an interesting anecdote.
Wow. And then the gentleman went on to be the reason why 4 Years of Anarchy started in 1914.
Yep.
Oh, God, who would have thought the history of the Shire was so fascinating?
It is, yeah.
And all surrounding, surrounding.
Yeah, but it's just
tied to koalas.
Well, it's just that whole idea of, that people did, it was a tourist destination.
Yeah.
A major tourist destination for people in Sydney. It was for, for international guests as well. So,
yeah.
we don't... often, living here, you don't realise what you've got. So, and I guess it's that kind of idea when I said, although we think of the Southern Highlands, a lot of people in their heads think of it, jams and, nice food and produce and cleared lands with, the Babe style. With that Robertson. And that idea is absolutely true. But 60% of that land is still bushland and wildlife, and that so close to Sydney. It's a really precious, amazing thing, and even the geological variances of across that landscape. The southern Blue Mountains has got, it's mainly all sandstone. Here we've got volcanic soil, so we've got different. You've got amazing orchids. You've got, we've got a spiny crayfish.
Where's that?
So critically endangered. Well, it's the only place that it's.
Don't tell me where it is.
No, it's in. It's called the Fitzroy Falls spiny crayfish. So,
are they those really foot long ones? No, these are tiny ones, are they?
No, just still the same size as your normal yabby. So,
because I've seen those, you can get those huge spiny crayfish that are almost a foot long kind of scenarios.
Yeah. So these are the only place that they're found on the planet. Yeah, and
Fitzroy Falls.
Yeah, sort of like in the creeks surrounding, so sort of Wilds Meadow, those sort of creeks.
Wow, how cool is that?
But this kind of idea, and we've got a giant dragonfly which is in the Penrose Swamps area, and we've got upland swamps, which is another kind of biological area as well, or sort of like its own kind of has its own ecological community surrounding it. So it's such a diverse area that. Ecologists are fascinated with that, biologists as well, but also, for tourism, the tourism potential, I think, is just, it's untapped. It really is.
Yeah, as well as for people like...
not untapped completely, but obviously, but there is great potential in terms of, say, adventure tourism and that kind of thing as well. So conservation tourism, which is another idea that I know I was looking the other day at Lord Howe Island. They run their own conservation tourism where you can spend 7. I thought, wow, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, even if people want to live, we're talking about that lifestyle, it's... If we just sold a little bit differently, and you don't buy 100 acres and then don't look after it, but you could have your own little slice of paradise that is a little bit of ag, it's a little bit of ecosystem, and you can have wallabies and wombats and platypus and all of those fantastic things that we grew up fascinated about. You can have those on your land.
You can.
You just need to look after it and
learn and be open to that learning and knowledge, because it's not easy. It's not necessarily just a case of. That's another thing, I guess, that we've found that regenerating a bushland is not necessarily just letting it go. It's
my old
there's weed.
My old man's a bush regenerator.
Oh, okay, yeah. Is he constantly on to you?
He could talk for days about it, and it's he was talking yesterday or the other day about.
Does he work up here?
No, he does it in
the Hornsby. They've got a great, such a fantastic network up there, and we do here as well.
Yeah. So he was talking like he's got just like small patches of land, and how much time he spends on like a really small patch of land, and the effort that goes into regenerating to getting it to what he was calling the maintenance stage. Yep. Where you poison things and you rip things out, and then you eventually get it to a point where all you have to weed every now and then. Yeah. But yes, the amount of time and effort's involved in that.
Yeah, and it's gaining that kind of knowledge and being open to that kind of knowledge.
But it's also we've had again Steve Horton on. We could make that into one of our trades. We could say, well, we want to regenerate the Highlands. Yep. We could look for grants or for funding for $1 million and bring in bush regenerators. Yep. And that could be a way of us to stimulate economy. As long as you think about it and plan it out, that could be a way of us doing business.
Yeah, and even that idea where I was talking before about conservation tourism, but also adventure tourism. There's we work closely with Conservation Volunteers Australia, so that they've been getting groups from Sydney, Wollongong, coming down here to do monitoring of koalas. So we've got I know there's a guy that lives in Cronulla that he's retired, but he literally regularly, like every time it's on, he's up here, like, you know,
wow,
doing,
that's great.
you know, and it's hard to quantify, I guess, what that means. You know, if that was to be, you know, that leveraged a little bit more, what that could mean to the economy as well, because, you know, with you know, people are looking for meaning, I guess, especially when if they've retired or something, they're looking for meaningful ways that they can give back to the community. And this is like a fantastic way to give back. And, you know, we've got a great, like in this area, we've got, I think, you know, 15 to 20 bush care groups, maybe, you know, 200 volunteers, and they do amazing work, you know, like through it. So
I have this idea, and I won't give too much of it away, but what about, you know, have people along the road that where this Highland FM station is, there's about 4 personal training gyms. So rather than go to a gym to do personal training, why don't you do bush personal training? You know, digging a hole, lugging a bag of weeds up an incline. That's going to give you a really good workout. So rather than pay somebody to instruct you to do 20 push-ups, do the 20 push-ups yourself, and then go and volunteer, like swing an axe, swing a pick. Yeah. And you get a workout. I'm
sure there's some cool yoga poses as well from bush, you know, that, you know, downward dog,
your downward
pulling
dog,
out a dandelion or something, or
on your hands,
ivy, the ivy.
What is it? Wandering Jew? Or you're using a saw to cut out privet. Yeah. That would give you a really good work.
That'd be like a Tai Chi move.
Yeah, I know I'm being a little bit facetious about it, but
absolutely.
It would be. People would pay for that, I reckon.
Yeah, well, it's I know that the bush care volunteers, you know, it's as much, you know, there's the great things that it's doing for the environment, like, and the assistance that it's doing there, but there's the physical aspects as well, and it's not easy, and well, it's as easy as you make it, I guess, you know, and also, you know, the social aspect is
community
massive,
aspect,
is huge, and you know, once you have a chat, you know, there's always the cup of tea, all that kind of stuff as you're working. You know, it's as much a social thing, I think, as it is an environmental thing as well.
So where's this koala conservation project going? What's the future?
Okay, so essentially what happened was we were able to get funding through the state government through the Saving Our Species program, which is, I think it's something in the order of, throughout the state, they're putting like $100 million into conservation or threatened species programs. Because the koala is sort of has been pinpointed as this iconic species, they get kind of an extra special attention. So we've been funded up till now mostly through the Saving Our Species program, and that's the state government, but also some money through council as well. And initially, I guess council kind of kick-started the project. And in the future, and so that provided, I'll just step back a bit, that provided research which provided that estimate, that baseline data, which gave us an initial estimate of the numbers in the Highlands, how they're doing. We're also working with Sydney University to find out, you know, disease-wise, you know, how they're doing. And they're doing okay, but, you know, I think it was between 60 to 80% have chlamydia, which is not yet. Which is quite interesting.
You get a bad reputation, my gosh.
Our ones do, but the Campbelltown koalas don't have chlamydia. Which,
dirty, you know? Dirty Winter Caribbean koalas.
So,
it's a true representative of the population then.
So, it's not necessarily fatal or anything. They can still continue to breed, but you know, if it becomes symptomatic, it can have major problems, like with the blindness and urinary tract infections. So it does, it will impact them on in the future. So we've got this baseline data, and so what the next stage will be ongoing monitoring of the population as well. So, and that's also, I guess the research is also fed into what's known as this green web mapping project, which council are doing to understand or to prioritise wildlife corridors throughout the area, understanding potential planning issues or development issues,
that's
agriculture,
good thinking,
understand, and then putting in place kind of these wildlife corridors that also indicate the areas for conservation investment into the future, because there's this new program or body called the Biodiversity Conservation Trust, which also has a lot of money that they are now offering to landholders. So the idea is that a lot of land is already kind of under national parks. A lot of land is already, in this shire is also in New South Wales land or the Water Board land or state forests. We need to get private landholders engaged now in that idea of conserving land on their property, that idea of managing their land for multiple purposes, potentially for conservation as well as agriculture. And this green web is kind of where it's heading, is to do some strategic planning for the shire and say, okay, well, this is needed, this land particularly, and we will either focus on let's work with the landholders on replanting, regenerating particular areas of land, and there might be funding through the Biodiversity Conservation Trust to help those landholders to transition. To say that, so it's really looking up, and we've got a real, as I said before,
because of the koalas. That's so awesome. Yeah,
it's that kind of. I said that umbrella species. So that kind of, and the funding that goes into that has sort of fed into this kind of research, and we want it to have not just to be research that sits there, but actually has some on the ground planning, some strategies that can really drive, help. How this shire will transition into a future where climate change is a reality, where we're going to have, more and more people potentially as well. How will we house them? But also how we're going to maintain, this really unique blend of wildlife habitat as well as, a fantastic place to live for everybody.
That's probably the perfect place to end the conversation. And I know it's easy sometimes to get down about what's happening, what you see in the world, but then you talk to people like yourself, and you see all the fantastic work that we're all actually doing it, and you think, well, those bad stories are the minority.
We've got reason to be genuinely optimistic. We've just got to be open to it and do our best to work together towards this, which I'm sure 99% of us want.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. Thank you so much for coming on today. This has been one of my favourite conversations.
Thanks,
I'll have to get you on again to, not even if it's not about koalas, just to talk about life in general. This has been HighCast with Joe Stammers. Excuse me. Please go to highcast.com.au, get to the promotions page, find out more about Majors Meets, find out more about Bright Spenders. Gentlemen, get to the SES, Wingecarribee SES Facebook page. Join up July 17. It'll be fun. See you next time.